In terms of photography, would you just recommend bringing a GoPro on a bolt snap that I can just clip up?
The GoPro on the mask, actually, you maybe get a little bit of. The only thing is, you look like a dickhead.
Yes, mate. Hi, in this episode I'll be talking to Lanny Vogel about his amazing dive centre in Mexico called Underworld Tulum. Over a brew, Lanny tells me how after a life in the Royal Navy, he and his wife Claire sold everything they had to follow their dream and run a dive centre that teaches cave and cavern diving in the Mexican Cenotes. Do you fancy a brew? So how's things? You doing alright?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a bit of a tough year, obviously. We've had very few, pretty much no courses since March was my last full cave course. But we've done some stuff. I've trained our dive shop manager, did his Rebreather course a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Getting out diving, just sort of keeping a hand in, really.
Nice one.
But it's.
Does that make much of a change then for you to do a bit more sort of recreational tech diving as opposed to work tech diving? You're not doing it for your own self.
Yeah, no, it's nice. I mean, we're quite lucky here that we have we can get out and do do our own fun diving when when we haven't got courses. There's so many caves here. We can just I haven't been there for a while, or there's a new one, or we'll just go out and have a look there.
Awesome. So Lanny Vogel, thanks for coming on Fancy a Brew podcast. If you want to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, and then we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah, hi Andy, nice to see you, mate. Hello to everybody from Mexico. I'm Lanny Vogel. Up until about, I think, 6 years ago, I was in the Navy, did about 22 years or so. And sort of quite randomly, we were out here in Mexico on holiday. I think my wife Claire we'd had a day off for the years or something, and said, if we won the lottery, we'd come out here and do it full time. And then sort of grabbed the back of a fag packet, did a quick calculation. I thought, actually, if we cash in the pension, leave, sell all that stuff in the UK, we could kind of make it work. So so we did. So quite a big upheaval, leaving the UK and then setting up a business out here. I did a bit of time in the Navy, sort of various sort of ships, submarines, bit of time in Iraq and Afghanistan. Diving wise, I wasn't a sort of professional diver. I think the one stage in my career that I kind of half had the opportunity to do it, I had a super, super busy job that was taking up all my time, and my main diving role would be fitting the poo pipe to submarines in the Scottish Loch in January, which didn't sort of fill me with joy. But I was the expeditions officer for Royal Navy and Royal Marine Sub Aqua, and did some that allowed me to get away and do a couple of weeks a year, sort of teaching people to dive. Also did some quite cool trips to the big one we did back in 2003, I think it was. We went to Pitcairn Islands and dived the Bounty and dived some absolutely pristine sort of remote coral islands, and that was pretty amazing. Sort of massive sort of logistical effort to get there. It was easier to cajack someone from the summit of Everest than it was from Pitcairn. Really? So that was a huge expert. That was pretty cool. But so I was very much involved in diving anyway. It was my main sort of hobby. Been an instructor for just over 20 years now. So doing that a lot through the military. But I came out to do my cave course here 12 years or so ago, and just fell in love with it, and it became our sort of default holiday destination. Realised quite early on, sort of getting into the tech diving side of things, that you could your bang for your buck in terms of really, really cool diving was better here than Egypt, which was our sort of previous sort of go-to holiday destination. So we were loving it out here. And then decided to sort of set up everything and come out here. So we bought a bit of land. We've set up Underworld Tulum, which is our little dive centre, with sort of rental apartments. Because of my sort of background in organising expeditions and club trips and things, we sort of set it up with that in mind. So we've got sort of nice self-catering rental apartments, sort of big social area, barbecue, all that sort of thing. And we really pretty much built what we wanted to have and didn't have when we used to come here as visiting cave divers. So that's been probably not an easy journey, sort of coming out to a completely new country, wading through the Mexican bureaucracy, sort of establishing ourselves as a dive centre. it didn't help. About 6 months after we got here, I was turning into a cenote, and someone drove into the back at me about 100 kilometers an hour. So flipped my truck over 3 times, sprayed dive gear all up the road, and I broke my back. So I wasn't walking for 3 months, wasn't diving for 6. So that sort of put a bit of a break on things. But despite all that, we're kind of still here and still cave diving and still loving it.
Nice one. Well, I sort of came across you. It would have been through Gary Dallas and Cave Camp, because Gary lives around the corner from me in Wigan, and obviously him harping on about Cave Camp. It looks phenomenal. Obviously, there's all the social aspects, you know, the food and the meetings and the evenings and the lectures together, and that social aspect really appeals to me, as do the giveaways and stuff like that. So that's how I came across you. And obviously I started talking to your wife a few years ago, wanting to get on it. But to be fair, it was very early in my diving career. Is there a better word to use than career when I'm not doing it for a living? My diving...
I don't know. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of journey, or I think it's a career. It's not unreasonable, is it?
No.
I think
it'd be nice if I was getting paid for it, though. So yeah, I spoke to Claire on and off a couple of years, and then finally we've managed to book some time, the worst year possible to book it, to come out to see you in December. So we'll obviously touch on that in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the cenotes aren't as busy, so it's actually quite nice to get some. Every cloud has a silver lining, and first, there's a lot of people who've got a bit more time to do exploration and things, and secondly, we haven't got the sort of huge numbers going through the cenotes, so you tend to have a slightly more chilled out and pleasant time.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But obviously, it's a lot of that's because we haven't really had any flights from Europe. Everything's still pretty much locked down there, and that people have to quarantine when they get back. So we've had a few guests from the US, but not really from Canada or Europe, which is where the majority of our sort of diving friends come from.
So has this lockdown period and pandemic been a massive hit for you then, in that respect?
I mean, financially, yeah. I mean, it's been quite tough. We've sort of taught my last full cave program in March, so just as it was all starting, and then we had really pretty much nothing, and other than we had a couple of days of people sort of walking in once it started opening up again about a month ago. Few people coming in for accommodation from the States, but other than that, it's been absolutely sort of zero income, really. Yeah. Hoping it's going to start sort of picking up again. I mean, we have sort of started to sort of taken the opportunity to do some sort of staff training. So our dive shop manager Pete, we did his Rebreather course a couple of weeks ago. Did all the sort of visual inspection courses, the workshop that's never looks so tidy, all the regulators for in date for servicing, all that sort of thing. The big impact we've had here really is one of the other things we do a lot of is dog rescue. Yeah. So there's a lot of pretty maltreated animals here, and we're quite involved in charity help to them dogs. But it means that because we haven't had the number of flights, that we've got all these dogs building up, and we've had sort of 21 animals, I think, with our average, and it's just that's pretty much a full-time job in itself.
Well, that's not so bad. So what Rebreather did he do his training on?
We've got SF2s here. We've got sort of rental units as well, so we've got 3 units for people to use. Which I like the simplicity of it.
Is that because it can flip from Backmount to Sidemount quite easily?
Yeah, it's pretty good in that you can use it in both configurations. It's also the small bellows counterlung means that you don't get. It's probably a little bit easier to start on or to dive on than many other rebreathers, in that you haven't got this big sort of buoyancy shift with the counterlung. I quite like it to dive. Dived on a various, had a start off on the Inspiration, had a JJ.
Just ordered mine. I've just ordered a JJ.
What, your JJ? Awesome. Are you going to train with Gary or train with
Kieran Hatton? I've gone with.
Ah, yeah, good old Kieran.
You know him, yeah. So I'm down in Plymouth. I'm crap with memory, but I reckon it's the last week of October. So I've booked in with him for that, and then we'll just see where it goes. But I've yet to fully pay for it. I paid the deposit, but the actual total bill is pretty horrific, innit? But needs must.
Yeah, it's not cheap, is it, rebreather diving?
Nah.
And although a lot of rebreather divers go, oh, look at my small gas bill, you know, look at the
Yeah.
open circuit guys have got a huge helium cost for a week's
Yeah.
aboard in Scapa or whatever. But you go, oh, yeah, but how much you pay for the unit and your cells and your lime?
I know it
but
does.
I hope you enjoy that. That'll be cracking.
It does worry me a little bit that I'm perhaps jumping the gun, but I kind of figure you've got to be in it to win it. And if I don't do it and I don't have one, I'm never going to go, and I can never make that step, you know, to do that kind of diving.
I think, yeah, well, I think it gets talked about so much, the right time to start rebreather diving. And I was sort of relatively late. I was a fairly you know, open circuit instructor and a lot of open circuit technical dives before I sort of started rebreather diving. And I think it's getting that the right time to do it. I think one of the advantages of doing it maybe a little bit later is that if your rebreather fails and you have to do an open circuit bailout ascent and you've done hundreds of them before, that's like, okay, I know how to do this. Whereas if you have only done technical diving on a rebreather and it fails and you're kind of trying to do something you're not really comfortable with in a really stressed situation. I personally, I think you should really have at least a sort of one decode bottle course and a bit of experience. So, you know, an advanced rec trimix or a, DK 50 with helium or whatever agency you think your course is through. So you've got a bit of experience in running ascents before you start doing that.
Okay, well, I'll drop the bomb now. I have done I've done TDI's version of AD, or what BSAC would call ADP, so the accelerated advanced nitrox and decompression procedures.
Advanced nitrox and DK, yeah, exactly that sort of level. And as long as you've done a bunch of dives and are used to doing gas switches, that's a good place to be.
And then obviously with Gary, I learned on Sidemount a few years ago, so I'm used to taking a rig out of my mouth at whatever depth and swapping over. And clearly, it's not a gas change as such, but I'm used to, that mentality.
Pretty comfortable. Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to cast my own fate in stone, but I'm quite unflappable in many respects. So I think, but I don't always rush what I'm doing. So I'm not going to be jumping down to 100 meters the week after I've qualified. I'll take it in small stages and increments, as and when I need to, really. You've got to start somewhere.
And it's a lot of fun as well. And, the perfect thing for like UK wreck diving, where you don't know which wreck you're going to end up on. You're planning a 50-meter dive and the weather's rubbish, so you have to go around the corner and you're doing a 25-meter dive.
Yeah.
It's the perfect tool for that sort of thing.
Well, how, in respect of all this COVID stuff that's gone on, is it going to affect you for going out to dive shows, do you think? As in bringing the new customers that may not have heard you? I'm
kind of it's been up in the air. I mean, we were supposed to be, I was at the speaking at the Go Diving show back in February. Last time I was in the UK.
I saw you there.
That's obviously moved now to September, which I'm hoping to get back for, but that's right on top of the next cave camp, so I might just have to sort of manage that a bit. Hoping to get out there for Tech Dive USA, which again was postponed from sort of April 20 to April 21. So it has been sort of has had a bit of an impact. But a lot of our I know I like sort of speaking at dive shows and doing that sort of thing and meeting people. But I think the most of our business comes from word of mouth, so it don't think it will have a huge sort of impact going forward. And there's a lot of people who are just aching to get back out and get some cave diving done, because it's been sitting at home it's not good for divers generally.
Nah. When you were in the Royal Navy, then had you already qualified as a diver before you joined up as a lad, or was that what transitioned you in?
It was kind of I kind of learned to dive by accident. We were supposed to be going. There was one of my Navy mates and his cousin, and it was a complete rugby front row actually. And we were supposed to be going skiing, and then for some reason the trip fell through on the Thursday, and all we could get last minute was Cyprus. And so we ended up in Cyprus at Easter, and it was March. It was really early and nothing was open, and we kind of wanted to learn to dive for a while. So I ended up having a really nice experience actually, and just loving it. And it sort of once I'd done the initial course, I sort of went through and did that through PADI, and then sort of started looking at wanting to do some of the deeper wrecks once I started UK diving. So that's when I did my sort of first advanced nitroxen deco with Izzy down in Portland.
Yeah.
And then I turned out with my 15 and my pony and left with a set of Agartha twins, sort of fully DIR'd up. At the same time, I was sort of going through the instructor program with that was with the Joint Services of Aquatension and Navy, so I could go on expeditions.
Was that still in Bovey then?
Yeah, it was. It's now in Dom. I talked to Dom, who's
HMS Drake, in it now,
the BSAC tech guy. Yeah, down in the dockyard. But yeah, Bovey was like iconic, but it was looking back, it wasn't the best place. Going down those narrow steps and sort of dragging cylinders up these sort of narrow spiral staircases where they used to sort of have the have all the guns and the casemate. So
luckily, I've never had to go there. I've seen it as we've gone out of Plymouth, but I've only ever been on Drake, and it's a mega setup there because it's only across the road, and then they've got 3 boats on the Versa dock. You just drop everything off and off you pop, and it's great.
No, I mean it was a great place to be because you were literally on your dive sites right out there.
Yeah,
Glenstranland's pretty much on your doorstep. But yeah, I think it's probably a better setup in the dockyard. I mean, when I went back there for my SADS, my sub-aqua diving supervisor refresher a couple of years ago. So yeah, good place.
Are you still an active SADS then?
Yeah, no, I've still maintained that. In fact, that's a good point. It's about that time of year where I need to be sending off my paperwork. We've had a military expert out here a couple of years ago, but they put a moratorium on apparently on training outside the EU, which could become training outside the UK in a couple of weeks with Brexit. But they had a moratorium on any adventurous training, and we actually set up quite a nice package of cavern diving, and I had to do a high risk and remote presentation to go in the overhead and all sorts. And it was quite a convoluted process, but we put up a really nice package for those guys, and it's quite a lot for us to do in terms of getting gas spectrographically analysed and all the paperwork. But yeah, we're very much open for military experts, and having done a few in the past, it's we kind of know what's required.
They're kind of hard work to set up, but so rewarding once you finished it. I'd only been on maybe 3 at the point that I went, I'll run one of those, and then one of my SADs had a heart attack, so I had to go down to Joint Services like the next day and jump on a SADs course and box that off. And I was like, wow, I've only done a couple hundred dives, and they're talking about thousands all these, and I'm like, this is horrendous. Yeah. Still did it, passed it.
It's a tough course, but good though, isn't it?
It's very good, yeah. What sort of diving did you do with the Royal Navy?
I tried to get a week or 2 a year, generally just out teaching people. So I did, went out and used some of the slots out in Ascension. When I was in my last ship, we took the boys and girls away for a week in the Red Sea to sort of teach them from to dive. Did their ocean diver, and some of them got to sports diver at the end of the week.
Cool.
So yeah, it was more about that, and then my sort of more technical diving was sort of in my leave. So did a couple of trips to the Prince of Wales and Repulse before they got smashed up. And again, coming out to Mexico it's just as I said before, in terms of how much quality diving you can get for not a lot of money. It's just amazing here. Once you're cave qualified, so twin set rental or side mount tanks rental, $10, maybe $10 for your nitrox, and you can do a fantastic sort of 90-minute 2-hour dive for the cost of a Cenote entrance, which you sort of compare that to boat fees, helium, getting out to somewhere even somewhere relatively inexpensive like Malta. It's pretty good here.
You're not at the sort of mercy of the weather in many respects, are you, or the tides, or
no, exactly. We don't have. We've got to be ropes off, and we dived. We are in the hurricane zone, and I'm sort of keeping quite a close eye on that NOAA website at the moment. But when we were out on holiday, we did dive through a hurricane, sort of passed us by quite closely, which meant we had absolutely torrential rain. But we still dived. It was fine. We just got in our dry suits, then walked out to the car.
Awesome. That's gleaming, isn't it? So talk me through what what it is to be a cave diver, as in qualifications?
So the cave course is quite a reasonably tough course, but like all sort of good training, it's done in a sort of fairly incremental, fairly sort of progressive manner.
Yeah.
So we normally say, although most agency standards say 50 dives, we normally say 100 is better. So you need to have 100 dives or so. You need to be pretty comfortable in your chosen configuration, whether that's backmount or side mount. So ideally, maybe have done something like a GUE fundamentals or a RAID performance dive or a TDI intro tech or IANTD essentials or one of those sort of propulsion techniques, buoyancy trim sort of courses. The reason for that is that there's quite a lot of new information, and if you're struggling and concentrating on sorting out your basic diving, your buoyancy trim, your backfilling or whatever, then you haven't got that spare capacity to cope with all the cave stuff. There's then sort of two parts to the cave program, really. Intro cave or cave 1 is your sort of first step into the overhead environment. Varies slightly between agencies, but generally you're limited in the navigation you can do, so often just limited to going on the main line, often limited by gas, so you're only diving a sixth, so you're not going in too far, but in Mexico that can be a good hour of
on a sixth of a cylinder.
Yeah, I mean, some of the caves here are 5 meters, so
right, that's gleaming.
You can get or six, and so a sixth of doubles.
Right,
So if you put on gas, you can get, even most people will get sort of 40 minutes in on a sixth on a 5 meter cave dive, which is a long way to be from fresh air if something goes wrong. So that's what the sort of intro course really does. It sort of builds you up so that you're pretty calm and able to deal with anything that goes wrong, and that's things like we build up really to having a no-vis gas sharing exit from your furthest point of penetration. Also do things like taking off the line. So what happens if you have a silt out and you've lost the line? How do you find it again? What happens if you lose your buddy? As well as all those normal sort of tech diving failures, the gas failures, the wing failures, all sorts of different things. And also all of the theory, so the cave conservation and a bit of geology, accident analysis is a big part. So looking at how people have got it wrong in the past and making sure that you don't make the same mistake. Yeah. So it's a really good package, 5 to 6 days normally, and that allows you to go off and dive some pretty amazing caves within the limits of intro. We then again, it's possible to sort of do a 0 to hero course, but we don't really recommend it because you're pretty knackered and pretty much topped out after 5 days of someone bothering you with a bubble gun and a blindfold and putting you under pressure. So we'd say go and have sort of 20 or so dives, get used to line laying, get used to the cave environment, go and have some fun, and then come back and do a cave 2 or a full cave class. And that is much more navigation. So you're laying jumps from one line to another, all the way to thirds, and that really opens up sort of hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of cave dives.
It sounds intense, mate.
It's quite intense, but it's kind of, we're not.
I can see it's necessary though.
Yeah, I mean, it's much better. It's sort of train hard, fight easy. And,
I love that.
We do put people under pressure, but in a kind of nice, sympathetic way. It's not one of these. You do see some of the sort of old school instructors, people being backed on the heads with backup lights and things. We're very much building it up incrementally and doing it, and everyone's different. So some people quite like a bit more of a direct debrief, and some people like a bit more of a sort of reflective style. And I think
woolly one finished off with a cuddle.
Yeah, exactly. Big group hug. Well, COVID, I'm not sure about group hugs are allowed.
A group elbow bump or something. But yeah, I mean, like from my understanding of cave diving, I think it does need to be quite an intense course in the respect of the knowledge that you're going to take in. It can't be, just light and fluffy. It's a very serious form of diving, isn't it, in comparison to the recreational sport diver that we're used to.
And I think, the consequences of getting it wrong are pretty severe. And I always sort of reflect on what I'd probably, be absolutely inconsolable and probably have to give up if one of my students died in a cave, because I'll be thinking, what didn't I do? What didn't I emphasize enough?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got to be pretty not hard, but
robust.
It's not an attendance course. There are very much performance standards you've got to reach, and that's not just sort of diving competence. That's sort of mental capacity as well, and attitude. You know, if you're gung ho, you know, it doesn't matter about the gas. Let's go. But you know, it's not sort of beyond the sort of capabilities of most sort of competent divers.
No.
But you've got to make that mental sort of leap that it is a much more serious situation. I think one of the nice things about it is that it gives you a lot more awareness and precision, because you've got to be always knowing where the line is, where your team is, times, remembering things. You make sure your dive awareness for all diving much better, and your precision. So in terms of precision and buoyancy and things, there's nowhere to hide. You've got a line. You can see whether you're tracking forward or tracking backwards, or you're stirring up the silt. You know, you'll become a much more precise diver.
I do like the idea of always progressing to be not elitist, but you know, as good as I could possibly be from what I've learned, you know, and increasing my learning, and then again, just become a better diver, even if I'm just in the local pond. You know, it's easy, isn't it?
Yeah. And apart from anything else, you go and see some amazing places. I mean, some of the cave formations and the speleotherms just take your breath away. They're so beautiful. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
What's the biggest difference then, if when people talk about cavern diving? How would you describe a cavern in comparison to a cave?
Yeah, I mean, cavern diving is quite a big part of the industry out here, and it's sort of a limited exposure to the overhead environment with a qualified guide. Cavern diver, as an independent cavern diver, is part of that. Has historically been part of the journey to be a cave diver. So, you know, historically, you'd go and I want to be a cave diver, so you'd be a cavern diver first, which is within the daylight zone, often a linear distance as well. To sort of limit your penetration to normally 60 meters. So you're basically within the daylight zone, still following a line, still in the overhead environment, but you can always see the light. So that's has historically been the sort of first step to be a cave diver. It's generally more common now to sort of combine that cavern dive with the intro cave class, because there's a lot of the same skills, and it kind of makes more sense to put that training together. But guided cavern diving is a big part of the industry here, and that is basically open water divers being taken on a sort of limited exposure to the overhead with an instructor. It's got a pretty good safety record actually, but you've still got often quite inexperienced open water divers being taken into places that you know, can be quite challenging. And you know, we do see some fairly horrendous things here, where people being taken to completely inappropriate places. As a cave instructor, I'm in some ways a little bit uncomfortable with it, but we've put some sort of mitigations in place for certainly for my company, that I only allow one person, one guide for 3 people rather than 4, which is the industry standard here. We're very careful to take people to appropriate cenotes, even if that means that I'm giving people one-on-one. I'd much rather than go, you go with these other people somewhere you may be not competent for. I'd much rather sort of do a one-on-one thing. We also insist on the minimum standard for to be a cavern guide is to be a dive master and a full cave diver. We insist on having at least 200 cave dives after your cave course, and the vast majority of our guides are also cave instructors as well. So it's just putting some sort of slightly more competent people in there, and we've had a very good. I mean, the industry general has got a pretty good safety record, and it's pretty good if you stay on the line, if you just follow the rules. It's absolutely fine, but there tragically have been some fatalities where people have gone, you know, if someone goes around the same line every day for a year, they're going to go, I might go around this corner or go a little bit further. And there's been a few sort of tragic outcomes from people swimming off the line.
Is it fair to say that a vast majority of those fatalities of people that have been perhaps untrained or undertrained for what they're doing?
So if you look at the accident analysis of the 800 or so people who've died in underwater caves, the vast majority have been untrained divers. Most of those were in the early days because there wasn't the cave training back when this sort of started in the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s. Scuba became like super popular, so we had sort of Jacques Cousteau and Hans and Lottie Haas and everything all over the TV. The Aqualinger became commercially available, and particularly in Florida, a lot of people were going, "Oh, I don't want to drive all the way to the coast for a dive. Look at that big hole that's just down the road. I'll go and have a look at that. Oh, there's a cave. I'm going to go and swim into that." And then when they reach their 50 bar or 700 psi turn pressure and time to surface, they're now a long way in, maybe without lights. So there was a lot of fatalities, and where that how sort of cave training became a thing. And there's a really good book that's actually free to download from the National Speleological Society website called Blueprint for Survival by Shaq Exley, who's the father of modern cave diving. And that's got some, there we go. That one there, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there's that you can download that for free as a PDF from the NSS website, and that really shows how it came about. But now there's actually there's not many untrained, because cave training is much more available. So there's very few or much fewer untrained fatalities. There's been a few when the guys on Boxing Day in Eagle's Nest a few years ago who decided to do one of the most challenging cave dives on the planet without any training at all on sort of Boxing Day, having got some scuba gear for the guy and his son for Christmas. Wow. But there's most of the fatalities now are sort of trained cave divers who make a mistake, be that navigation, gas planning, or whatever else.
Jeez, I mean, like, reading this one here, this basic cave diving by Shaq, the sort of case studies at every sort of turn of the page for each chapter, whether it be silt, scuba diving, or panic, or whatever, or too deep. Everyone, it starts off in the analysis. Again, several errors are made. A continuous guideline was not used. It's like, at which point do you not know? You need to get yourself in and out safely. Without training, I suppose.
But you rationalise that. Just, no, I'll be all right. I'm only not going that far off the guideline, or I've been here before. The other, I think one of the biggest improvements in diver training, or in the dive industry in general, in the last few years has been the introduction of human factors.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've come across sort of Gareth Locke's work.
I've had him on. He's been on here, He's been one of my guests.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Gareth's a good old friend of ours, and he's, we've been involved in that since the very beginning. And I think it's such a big improvement. And it's kind of been part of cave training for a long time with the accident analysis, and started really by Shaq going, look, this person made this mistake, this person made this mistake. You've got to, and I think all divers, it's a good idea to look at any accident that's happened and gone, okay, what would happen to me if those sequence of events had taken place? Would my procedures be robust enough to make me survive that? And if the answer is no, then you might want to look at getting some more training or changing how you do things.
Nice. I mean, we're struggling really to get out and do any sort of deeper, longer dives at the minute, probably because of the current situation. We don't have our own boat, and the local skippers are using it for other things, to try and make their money back. I think they make more money, doing guided tours around North Wales where we're at. And so to get out and get those practices, and I think much like after the lockdown, a lot of people got back in and thought they were in the water just 2 weeks ago rather than 3 months ago, and forget, it's not muscle memory all the time, is it? When you've forgotten, or you've not done something for practice.
And I think that's a really good thing. And certainly we always say that if you're coming back to cave diving after a year or so, come and do a guided day, and we'll do some drills, and we'll just make sure that you're still up to speed again. And it was, sadly, you look back at the Easter weekend, wasn't it? And all the sort of BSAC accident reports, there was always a massive spike of fatalities, because people are going, last dived last September, it's now April, I'll just jump in and do the same dive I did before without getting in the pool or checking the gear and all the other sort of things.
I think that's what's good about Gareth Locke. He sort of highlighted that, being able to talk about things and not being chest poked for getting it wrong.
Yeah, the sort of just culture thing. I think I've done all of the courses, the face-to-face one, the online one. Yeah. But the book, I think, is excellent. And I think for 25 quid or whatever it is about the best investment you can make in being a safer diver for not a massive financial outlay. Apart from anything else, there's some brilliant stories in there where you go, what was going on there? That's extraordinary.
Well, I'm not gonna, and I told Gareth this when he came on. It was the hardest book I've ever tried to read because there's a lot of 3-syllable words in there, and they're all bigger than I'm used to. But the actual case studies, the stories, definitely made a decent enough impact. So I got the gist of what he was trying to say, and it made perfect sense to start thinking about things, in a planning and preparation phase in a slightly different way than I was. Anyway, moving forward, so we're coming out to you in December. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
As long as Lufthansa don't go bankrupt or cancel our flights. And we're staying in the hotel that you and Claire had your honeymoon in. So we're all excited. Tell me what's going to happen. What do I need to bring? What do I need to leave at home? What kind of things are we going to see?
So I think we've got you booked in for some cavern diving, haven't we? There may be a possibility of, if you can get the pass, to do a bit of cave training, but we'll maybe discuss that when we get out here.
Yeah.
You can pretty much do the sort of the cavern tours in recreational gear, and we've got rental gear, pretty decent rental gear, single tank wings, etc.
Yeah.
But if you are comfortable in, so you've done your Sidemount stuff with Gary, we're very happy to do your cavern tour in Sidemount. Not a lot of places do that, but actually my view is that if you're trained to dive a twin set or trained to dive Sidemount, then far better you be using that in the cavern environment because it's what you're used to, and there's more gas, isn't there? So just bring really whatever gear that you're kind of comfortable with. Again, we can provide pretty much everything, but if you've got I don't know what side mount gear you're diving, probably X Deep or
absolutely, it's an X Deep. Got to have the best, haven't you?
Well, I've got an X Deep, a Razor, an Apex. I've got a few different side mount harnesses, but I do like that is a good old harness. But whatever you're comfortable with, and we'll go for a fantastic day. We like to sort of again, a lot of the some of the bigger centres in the hotels will it's very much a sausage machine. So you get on the bus, go to the Cenotes, 2 dives, come back, and then they take the next people out in the afternoon. We kind of a bit more chilled out than that, so we take a whole day over it, give you a nice lunch. We can combine, certainly for people who are sort of looking towards sort of a bit of cave training. One of the reasons why we mainly use cave instructors for our guides, apart from the safety, is that we can do a little bit of coaching and we can do a little bit of propulsion. And if you want to do an S drill before your cavern dive, then that's fine. Or if you just want to do a little bit of stuff afterwards, we can really tailor it to the individual. Even the guided caverns are absolutely stunning. And there's some really amazing places. Obviously, you get to a slightly more, probably less damaged, highly decorated place a little bit further into the caves. Yeah. But because some of the light effects and combined with the formations, you get some really amazing things. I mean, talking of where you're staying, when we came out here on honeymoon, Claire I'd already done Claire's tech courses and stuff, so she's a pretty competent diver, and she's like, right, I'm not doing a bloody cave course on honeymoon. We'll just take the back plates and wings, and doubles regs and stuff. And we went to Dos Ocos, which is maybe one of the places that we'll go in December. Oh, this is amazing, can we do some more of this? Well, we can maybe do a cave course. So that's how it all started, really. We ended up doing a cave course, and then after that we were out here every a couple of times a year because it's just sort of fell in love with the air and fell in love with the caves.
Awesome. What else have I got in here? So obviously when I talked to you earlier and we talked about how I came across you with Cave Camp, clearly that's not going ahead this year because it'd be coming up now, wouldn't it, if not now?
We'd be what is it today, we'd be having a huge, we just have everyone arriving really. We're supposed to be starting on the 12th.
Right.
That's not happening until next year. So that's now happening from the 11th to the 25th of September 2021. We are pretty much full already because a lot of people from 2020 rebooked. But we're definitely going to look at it seems a long way away, but 2022, we're going to look at maybe running 2 events, one that's more focused on qualified divers and one that's more focused on training. I mean, one of the when we first set up Cave Camp, one of the things we wanted to do was kind of have a lot of sort of cross pollination and talk between people doing courses with different people.
Yeah.
So if you've, someone's done a course with Gary Dallas, someone's done a course with Steve Lewis, someone's done a course with me, someone else has done a course with, James Drake or Marissa Eckhart or John Kieran. And we've got Ian France. We've got a whole bunch of really, really cool instructors, and like Sammy Pakenham for the first year as well. They'll come back in the evening and it'll be, all right, you did Lost Line today. How did that go? And there'll be a really nice sort of learning experience because everyone's sort of bouncing off each other. We're almost sort of victims of the success of the event is that we had so many people coming back that it's been a lot of qualified cave divers. And that's quite cool because you're already knackered after a day of cave training. And, then go, right, we're going to have a barbecue and, I know Patrick Widman's going to talk about exploring Madagascar, and everyone's, God, this is really interesting, but I just want to chill out. It's just too much. So that's, I think, why it's become more of a sort of qualified diver thing. So we're going to try and split out those two events and have it one, and that's in 2022. The other thing we're going to be running next year is a BSAC event, Dive Fest, which is more at the cavern level / sort of non-qualified cave divers, and maybe people who want to do some cave courses. And that's in July next year. We're going to wrap that in with some scooter tri dives, some CCR tri dives, and some cool presentations and things as well. So that's much more of a sort of social, dipping your toe in if people want to do a week of cavern guiding, maybe a little bit of ocean diving as well, and then think about cave training in future, or not, just come and enjoy some really cool recreational diving and meet some nice people.
That's kind of segued me into a few of my guests that I've had on here before. I've mentioned that I'm coming out to you in December, certainly earlier on in this year, and this is the bull sharks. They're around Mexico in December, and you mentioning ocean diving. I don't want to take away from your business, but what is the script?
No, we run bull shark tours.
All right, book us in for one of them as well then.
I'm just looking at my little shark chart that's up here. November to March are bull sharks.
Right, you need to book us in for a couple of days of that.
Yeah, we'll go and have some fun there. They come pretty close. It's pretty cool up in Playa del Carmen there. The ocean diving is actually pretty nice here, but the caves are absolutely world class. And again, I'm not sure if I'm underselling it, but to describe it as sort of Caribbean average. So it's perfectly nice coral, reasonably nice fish. A lot of the sort of US guests who come on, like going mad for Cosmo and some of the other diving. Most Brits who've been to the Red Sea or maybe been to some of the nicer places in the Far East, that's nice. Not blown away by it, but it's perfectly nice. And I do, go and I like to try and teach a couple of recreational courses a year, and we always go in the sea for those. So it's actually quite nice to keep your hand in and just teach some new divers from time to time.
Well, to quote our mutual friend Steve Kirkman, I've seen enough pretty pink fish, but if those big boys are in there, then get me near them. So, in terms of photography, would you just recommend bringing a GoPro on a bolt snap that I can just clip up and go with that?
It's cave photography as a whole huge sort of topic, and generally people who haven't sort of spent the time to learn it and get some good video lights, etc., don't get particularly good results. If you really want a beautiful picture to put on your wall, we normally say, if you definitely want you in it, then book a day with someone like Tom St. George is our go-to photographer. Probably, if you sort of see the stuff on Facebook he puts on, he's our official cave camp photographer. Right. Just extraordinary. But that's experience built up over 10 years of knowing where to hide your slave strobe and knowing how it all works. So basically, I've got this perfectly nice camera for taking pictures of fish and stuff. But the cave eats light, and you need to have, to get something really cool, you've got a minimum of 2 big strobes or video lights, plus probably another slave strobe that's either strapped to the back of the diver or hidden somewhere in the cave. So it's quite a lot of trial and error. And actually, it also, cameras, my friend Natalie Gibb wrote a really good article for the GUE magazine about why cameras should be on the accident analysis list, because there's you can look at a lot of the cave fatalities have had a camera involved. So actually in a new environment, maybe think about concentrating on following the line rather than
I'm fine with
taking
that.
pictures. But we work with Tom, and if you're an underwater photographer, we can set up a really cool workshop, even in the sort of caverns, to get some amazing results.
Right.
And that's part of he did the part of Cave Camp. He was there's a day of underwater photography workshop, and half people are photographers, half people are models, and you get some amazing results.
Yeah.
We even did one last year with the iPhone in a box, basically.
Right.
With the Leo 3, those guys, fantastic results there as well.
I do remember when I first ever learnt to dive, and I said to the lady, "Are we all right to bring in our GoPro? I had it strapped on my hand or something like that, because I'd love to show our in-laws or like my wife's mum, what we're up to." And it almost took away at that point, my first half a dozen dives. It took away the experience of being in the water and getting used to it.
Yeah.
So I totally get where you're coming from with that. And I think if it was just a GoPro that's clipped on and, just to get us going in and coming out, rather than taking away from that whole experience, it'd be megally hard, because faffing with settings, trying to get your lights here and there and everywhere, and then worrying about hitting something sounds like
GoPro. The GoPro on the mask, actually, you maybe get a little bit of. The only thing is, you look like a dickhead.
Yes, mate. You've made it. That's going to be the hook right at the beginning of this. Now, that's amazing.
But I think that because you don't generally get great results with GoPro in the dark. Then I normally say either sort of download some videos from YouTube or get someone get a professional to take you a picture if you want something for your wall.
Cool. So what have you got coming up this next couple of days? Are you busy?
We've got just sort of written to all the cave camp, all our sponsors from Cave Camp, so written to Apex and Seacraft and Otter and Shearwater and Raid and Gareth at the Human Diver.
Yeah.
And I think I said Otter, didn't I? And John at Otter. We've just to let them know what's going on. We're going to put out a little bit of a sort of Cave Camp retrospective on social media, just some videos and things from the last few years, just to remind people that we're still here. We have got a few people from the US. We've got a few people coming out just to dive over the next month or so. I think our first UK guests we've got coming out next month. They're going to fly through the US. So it's starting to pick up a little bit, but nowhere near the sort of volumes that we've been used to. I'm going out, just chatting to some friends on Messenger. We're going to go out and do some reasonably big scooter dives this week. I think going to get the double stages and the oxygen and DPVs and backup DPVs and go a reasonably long way into the cave to have a bit of fun. But yeah, just keeping ticking over, really.
Well, the main sort of interesting diving for me would be expeditions. And I know we touched on it earlier on from our joint services trips away that we've done.
In terms of exploration out here, there's still a lot of exploration going on. We're still being sort of ticking over the business, but definitely I'm always on the lookout for trying to find some interesting holes in the ground to go in and see if there's anything that goes. We had the guys who did, I don't know if you saw the Mexico BBC documentary a few years ago that had a really cool about some of the animals on at Calakmul, and there was a really good one with some caves in it as well. That was
it wasn't with Steve Backshaw, was it?
No, that was another one. That was with that was Robbie Schmetner, who's one of the big explorers. He's a friend of ours. He's one of the big explorers out here. So they do a lot through his place. But we had the sort of camera people staying here, so we can provide support for anything, really.
Yeah.
And it tends to be a lot of the exploration here tends to be predicated on sort of local contacts and being out walking in the jungle and stuff.
Is that something that you think you personally, do you miss going on expeditions or setting them up?
Well, there's a lot of exploration still to be done, and we're kind
Yeah.
of been focusing a bit this year on sort of keeping the business ticking over. But that always on the list of when we find there's someone who does some dog rescue stuff for us, who's got a place in the jungle with some holes in the ground. So I need to go and have a chat with him and see if he's got some, go and jump in those and see if anything's going. And then obviously laying new line and surveying it and doing the mapping and everything is a really cool, really
so
cool thing to do.
this big one that you've got coming up this week with like backup scooters and all the rest.
No, we're going to go and there's a couple of
something
places that we've not been. I mean, the other thing here is because of the the sort of teaching the diving we do, keeping current on open circuit, closed circuit, side mount, multi-stage, DPV, and just knowing caves well enough to guide in. That's quite a big job in itself. But we're going to go out. Just some friends are going to go out and have some fun diving.
Snuggle. What about the water quality? Because obviously the weather's not too much of an impact, but maybe the tourism industry and the sort of runoff? Sorry, of water from.
It's always a worry, and there's been a couple of one of the cavern tours that's also got quite a nice cave in it that we don't really use anymore because they put the marina in Puerto Venturas, and it sort of backed up, and there was all sorts of nasty organic matter in the water.
Wow.
And there's actually caves under Tulum. There's a huge number of caves under Tulum, and the guy I don't know who went and last dived them, they were coming out with just horrendous flu-like symptoms, coughing up blood, all sorts of nasty things, because it's just super polluted. It's not, the water management here is not great. And I think that's one of the things we can do as cave divers is sort of be advocates for the underwater environment. There's a really good little group. They're just making they're filming their new film at the moment, actually, guys called Somos los Cenotes, We Are the Cenotes. And they are just trying to make that point that we've got to be mindful of how we're using this environment. We can't just take all the water out and dump all the shit in them, because it's just going to ruin this absolutely pristine environment, and that's going to have all sorts of knock-on effects.
If diving's going to increase in numbers of people doing it, and they're all going to increase the tourism to come and look at what a pristine wilderness you've got, it's going to be a massive shame if that just gets ruined. A massive chunk of tourism's gone, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, they've got this. We've got this train is one of the big worries at the moment. The Mayan train that's going to come down from Cancun all the way down almost to the Belize border.
Yeah.
And worrying about how that's going to impact the entrances of the cenotes. I mean, it's not as bad as the airport, which is going to go right over Sakakton, which was the biggest.
Yeah,
it is the biggest underwater cave in the world, and that would have been horrendous. That would have just completely trashed everything. But they've kind of cancelled that. But this train is a little bit of a worry about what environmental impact that's going to have, and also the increased number of tourists. Tulum's. I mean, I've been coming to Tulum for 15 years or so. I've been living here for 6, and the changes we see are just just extraordinary. It was quite a low key sort of hippie vibe, laid back place, but now it's become much more mainstream. Even now with COVID, there's huge numbers of US tourists.
That's crazy, isn't it?
We're kind of part of the problem though, because we have come out here and built a dive centre, but we try and be as environmentally conscious as possible and recycle and all that.
Yeah, what's the sort of way your community have tried to get in? Get the leaders and the powers that be involved and understand what you were doing to see the detrimental damage with that water course?
It's kind of quite difficult to have any influence with the sort of Mexican government. There is an organisation, I'm part of the line committee, so the safety committee, and the umbrella organisation there is almost the liaison, but that's more with the government, but that's more about sort of guide credentials and things than actually environmental. But these guys, Somos los Cenotes, it's quite a good idea to film things and show that there are problems with pollution. There's a lot of there's a few people doing some sort of science projects where they've got water quality monitoring, but like many places in the world, cash talks, and if you've got someone saying, "Oh no, this is going to have an impact on the water quality," and someone's going to have a multi-million-dollar investment that's going to give 300 locals jobs, it's where the politics means that's what's going to happen. And it's very sad seeing the number of resorts and even the number of new resorts that's all the way up the road from here to Cancun. But
did they actually use the water as drinking water as well? Is that sort of siphoned up in some respect, like welled up, or?
Yeah, we tend to use we're on the sort of mains. We have got a well here as sort of backup, which you can use for showering. Because it's been filtered through the limestone, it's very rich in calcite. So even if you leave a bucket of water overnight, you get this crust on top of it. So not really recommended for drinking. So we have just sort of bottled water, big sort of 20-litre bottled Garethons of water. But you can. I mean, if you've got like dry lips on a cave dive, I'll just take my rag out and have a little slurp. And
does it taste all right?
Yeah, no, it's really nice. It's basically very, very, hopefully, very pure spring water. Obviously, the more development that goes on, but generally we're going a little bit further out. We're not downstream of the settlements. We're upstream of the settlements when we dive normally. Mm-hmm. But you'd sometimes see the pipe coming down into the cave and going, I wonder what's coming out of there.
Yeah, I've seen that before. In one at Bays we dived in earlier this summer. I'm thinking, need to stay away from that. So starting to wrap things up then, Lanny, do you want to just give us a bit of a summary then about what we can do with you and how we can find you and whatnot?
We're open, although sort of cave camp for next year is pretty much full. We have got a reserve list, but we're open at Underworld. Underworld Tulum is our website.
Yeah.
We're open all year for everything from recreational training, BSAC courses, TDI, IANTD, PADI, RAID. We teach a range of agencies. Recreational cavern diving, just have a look at the beautiful underwater environment, in the overhead, or tech, CCR, scooters, whatever you want, and or just come out and have a nice time sitting under a palm tree drinking tequila.
Well, I tell you what, I cannot wait.
So yeah, we do have a good little facility here for all sorts of training or recreational cavern diving or cave training. So always happy to talk about diving. So if anybody's got any questions about anything cave related or Mexico related, do get in touch, and we're looking forward to seeing you in December.
Well, I can certainly back up that you're quite happy to talk. The amount of times I've emailed you or Claire, and clearly there's a time difference because you're like the other side of the Atlantic, but other than that, you've been on the ball every time, straight back, really good answers, and I've fully got what I wanted from you in respect of knowing that one day I'm coming. I just needed to sort out when I was.
No, thanks, mate. It is, I think that's one of the things with the dive industry is a lot of people don't have a particularly good response rate to emails.
Have you got dogs?
Yeah, they're going.
You can't tell.
Sorry about that. They're going nuts.
Right.
We've got. I think today's animal count is 21. So we've got. We do a lot of work with those with rescue dogs. So
my missus is more excited about seeing your dogs than she is.
Mate, we've got some really good ones at the moment
in the caves. Ace. Right. Well, thanks for coming on, mate. I really do appreciate it.
Mate. Really although nice
we had a drama getting on at first because of the power cut.
Yeah, sorry about the power, but yeah, mate, really looking forward to seeing you in December. Nice. We'll definitely go for some cool dives and catch up. Okay, mate. Well, nice to speak to you.
Nice one. Take it easy. I'll see you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks very much, buddy. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. So that brings to an end episode 27 with my friend Lanny Vogel. Links to all the things we discussed are in the podcast notes. You've been listening to Are You a Scuba Diver Fancy a Brew podcast with me, Andy the Northern Diver. You can find more scuba related content on my YouTube channel, and the link is in the podcast notes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing and leaving us a 5-star review. If there's someone or something you'd like us to discuss, let us know via our Facebook page. Thanks for listening. See you on the next one.